I can't see you now because I'm just looking at my screen. So
okay. How you doing? My name is Ryan Wilson. This is Crawley. We are both members of Stop Gen AI. And today we are going to be going over different ways. Kim is going to be showing us how we can all avoid AI in our daily lives, because it really is easier than you think. Man, it really, really is. I know it feels daunting because they've pushed us into this AI matrix with all these big tech companies, but it's really pretty easy. And I'm going to hand it over to Kim now to get this started. Hey, Kim.
hello. Yeah, it's great. Thank you very much, Ryan. So one of the keys to avoiding Gen AI is to remove corporate proprietary operating systems and replace them with operating systems that are a lot less corporate. So if you've got a Windows PC, your best bet is to switch to a Linux distro. I know a lot of people are sticking with Windows 10 to avoid more Copilot updates. They think that that'll be the way to do it. But even though Microsoft isn't really supporting Windows 10 anymore, except if you pay extra for it, they're going to force more surveillance and Gen AI into Windows, even if you're sticking with Windows 10, I believe. Like, they're not going to just let you avoid Copilot and all the horrors of Copilot if you stick to an older version of Windows.
But they can't afford to, right? Like, that's the thing that we're learning, is that none of these companies, they've invested so much in this technology that they can't afford to let us ignore it.
Exactly. They will, as long as you keep using their software, they will find a way to force you to use it. I was using Windows 11 for quite some time in like 2023 into 2024. And every time there was a Windows update, I had to go into the registry and do computer nerdy stuff to stop Copilot. They're going to make that more and more aggressive, where every update forces it on you, no matter what you've done. So really, your best bet is to start using Linux now. The thing about Linux is people get intimidated because there are literally hundreds, if not thousands, of Linux distributions, which are different, because Linux is not one operating system. It is a Linux kernel that people make into different operating systems. So people get overwhelmed by the choice. I would say, in general, some Linux distros, when they're owned by corporations such as Fedora, should be avoided because IBM is already pushing Gen AI very hard into Fedora and into Red Hat, the two Linux distros that IBM owns.
Okay.
They've made it very clear that they are using Fedora and Red Hat to push their Gen AI crap. So you're best to avoid Fedora, avoid Red Hat. If you're not sure, the general rule of thumb is to avoid, like, for instance, there's an Oracle Linux. Oracle is a huge tech company. A
huge evil tech corporate.
Yeah, I would probably not go with the Oracle Linux distribution.
Yeah, if you see the word Oracle anywhere, run, basically, right?
So I would say, because you're looking for something that is very user-friendly, because that's another reason why people avoid Linux, because they think it's going to be computer nerd stuff that they won't understand and that Windows is so much easier. But people have there was a time maybe 20 years ago when all Linux operating systems were only for computer nerds, but there's been a lot of effort since then to make versions of Linux that are very user-friendly, right? So I would argue that some of them are much easier to use than Windows 11.
Sure.
Because you don't have a menu full of ads. You don't have Microsoft Copilot trying to interfere with you every time you try to type into something. That's what I hear now. If you're in Windows 11, you try to type into a document or put some cells into Excel or something. Copilot will get in between and be like, hey, I see you want to type some stuff into a document. Let me put in some slop instead.
Yes. Like the thing that I've seen on even on the Mac, which we'll talk about later, but on my Mac OS, right, is like when I try to the autocorrect has expanded, right? And so like instead of just giving you what word they think you're trying to spell, they give you like half the sentence that you're trying to say, right?
Even though you've disabled Apple Intelligence.
Yes.
Creepy.
Yeah.
Very creepy. So I would say, as far as what Linux distros that combine being very accessible and friendly, user-friendly, with being Linux distros, I feel pretty secure that they're not going to shove Gen AI into it.
Okay.
Elementary OS is a good recommendation. So this is what their desktop looks like. I think they deliberately modeled the elementary OS interface based on Mac.
Yep.
So even though you cannot install this on a Mac, not easily anyway.
Right.
You need to install it on a Windows PC. But if you are switching over from Mac to Linux and you got a brand new Windows PC or an old one that you're installing out, this is the one that will give you the user interface that you would be familiar with as a Mac user. And then,
so like, as you know, I'm getting my son a computer. This is the one you would recommend for him?
Yeah, I mean, I'll see what the tweaks are for getting Roblox to work.
Sure.
Because there are some Linux distros that those tweaks work better in. But yeah, assuming that the tweaks that I find to get Roblox running apply to elementary OS, then elementary OS would be a good choice.
Okay.
Because obviously your son's priority is Roblox.
Yeah. But I just mean like as far as somebody who's, like he is, that's, new to the systems themselves and would probably be, it would be an easy transition, right?
Yeah, exactly. They designed it specifically to be a seamless transition from Mac OS as far as how to use it is concerned.
Gotcha.
And then we've another one that I think is pretty good. Let me see here. I swear I had it here. Linux Mint. I'll try and bring up the Linux Mint website again. So both elementary and the developers of Linux Mint have made it very clear that they're not on the Gen AI train. So It could be, and it's designed to be, Linux Mint is also designed to, I would say Linux Mint's user interface is more like Windows XP.
Okay.
So if you're coming from a lifetime of using Windows, maybe the Linux Mint interface would be better for you.
Gotcha.
So yeah, but I would recommend exploring DistroWatch. There's a whole section for beginners, meaning that these are operating systems that are good for beginners.
Okay.
That you can look at. But when you don't know what a developer's stance on Gen AI is, or whether you'd be able to avoid it or not, make your judgment based on, does a corporation own this distro, or is this distro maintained by a bunch of nerds working for free?
Right.
A lot of software is developed by a bunch of nerds working for free because it's a passion project.
And that's where you would like to invest your time, especially if you are against Gen AI, because usually the nerds are almost universally against it.
Absolutely. If they're not on the on the payroll, right?
Yes.
So now if you have an Android phone, it is possible to replace the operating system there too. So Graphene OS works on Google Pixel phones specifically. So I'll show you. So if you have one of these Pixel models, you can install Graphene OS. If you don't, then Graphene OS is not an option for you. And that's because the developers of Graphene OS believe that they can only create a very private operating system if they use the Google Pixel hardware. It's kind of technically complicated.
Sure.
But it does run all Android apps, because it's not an entirely new operating system. They take Android and they remove a lot of the espionage stuff from it. The Google, like they call it a de-Googled phone, right? So it has some of the Android core on it, but they take out the bad stuff that Google is doing with it. And they sandbox the functions that are necessary, like the Google Play Store. So that could be an option, Graphene OS. If you don't have a Pixel phone, but you have an Android phone, then I would recommend Lineage OS instead. And Lineage OS, you should go to the wiki and look up which devices are supported. But the majority of popular Android phones, especially Samsung ones and Motorola ones, are very well supported by Lineage OS. So if you don't have a Pixel phone that will take Graphene, I would say Lineage is the best bet. And again, with Lineage, it's not actually an entirely new operating system. They take Android and they remove the bad Google stuff from it, while still being able to install and run Android applications. So they even call it an Android distribution.
Okay, so this is the one that would be, if you liked the way that Android worked for you, right? You just don't want all the spy shit that Google put in it.
You will get rid of Google Gemini by installing Lineage OS. Okay. Gemini is like the Google equivalent of Apple Intelligence.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And they are forcing it onto Android phones unless you use an Android fork. So I spent an entire year with vanilla Android getting updates that kept nagging about Google Gemini. And I eventually realized that I would not be able to disable or escape Gemini without disabling and escaping vanilla Android. So that's what I did. Now, if you have Apple hardware, then it's not so easy when it comes to operating systems. You literally, if there's any chance of installing a non-Mac OS operating system on a Mac, it would require really high-tech tinkering where they open up the circuit board and they remove like chips on the circuit board and replace them with other chips. So that's how technically complicated they've made it. So you can't really, there's really no point to doing that. If you're at the point where you're Frankensteining the hardware to install a different operating system, maybe you should just buy a new PC.
Yeah, right. Just jump ship all together.
So I understand that Macs are very expensive, and I've known a lot of Mac users over the years, and you have my understanding for not leaving the Apple ecosystem, especially since they keep you in their ecosystem with their Apple ID and iCloud and all that.
Yes.
So the best bet for you until you've transitioned away from the Apple ecosystem is to stay on top of disabling Apple Intelligence. So, and Ryan, this is something that you do as well. Every time there's a Mac update, you go back to the settings.
Well, and so when Apple Intelligence first came out in the settings section, they would have it started out right underneath like your Apple ID and your family account, right? So it was like the third thing on the settings app when it first was introduced, right? And would you like to have Apple Intelligence included in your software? And you say yes or no. Now it's like 6 things down. It's down past like CarPlay. And so like and it's with Siri now as opposed to on its own. And like you still have the option of to switch and to not to switch. The same with on the Mac OS, but this was for the iPhone. And on each one, they automatically have you not set up for it, but they don't always. So be vigilant is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. So every time there's an update, you got to go back into the settings and you got to crawl through the settings deep. But it's worth doing that effort for as long as you still have Apple hardware. So that's Mac, also applies to iPhones and iOS.
Yes.
So we will have links to web pages to explain how to disable Apple Intelligence now. And then the other thing that you got to do if you have a Mac or you have an iPhone is just to make sure that you don't use other applications that could have Gen AI in them. So I would say, for instance, avoid using Safari as your web browser.
Yes.
Because they're definitely going to push Apple Intelligence into that. Here is, I've got a web page here that's, let me see here. The type of software that, oh wait, I got private web browsers guide somewhere. There we go. So whether you've got a Linux PC or you're staying with Mac for a while, or even if you're going to stick with Windows for a while, even though I wouldn't recommend that,
right,
you got to change your web browser to one that isn't quite so corporate. So Tuda actually has web browser recommendations. I'll explain how mine are slightly different, but mainly the same. So they're saying that Firefox and LibreWolf are the best for privacy overall. So I'm using LibreWolf right now. LibreWolf is very good. The only downside with LibreWolf, other than the default privacy settings being so strict, is it's desktop only. So you can't install LibreWolf on your phone. But LibreWolf is just a fork of Firefox. So they take all the bad Mozilla spying because Mozilla Firefox are pushing Gen AI now.
That's not surprising, actually.
I
used Firefox in the early 2000s.
That's mind-blowing, that they've gone that kind of corporate evil. So if you want the good version of Firefox, basically it's LibreWolf. They take out all the bad stuff.
Okay.
So I wouldn't recommend Firefox as a top private browser based on what they're doing. You'll also hear a lot of people recommend Brave as a good option for a non-corporate private web browser. But Brave are still into the crypto mining stuff. They're still into features of, we will store your Bitcoin wallet and we will enable you to generate cryptocurrency and all that. And I can't trust them when that's a part of their culture. So I would never, ever recommend Brave.
No, that makes complete sense.
Tor browser is good. Actually, Tor browser is usually what people use to use Tor and use the dark web, but you can also use it to browse the ordinary web. What you will find problematic with Tor browser is it does disable JavaScript by default. So many web pages and websites require JavaScript. You might want to go into the settings and enable JavaScript, but otherwise, Tor browser is a good choice, and Tor browser is actually available on desktop and mobile. I would recommend Vivaldi too, but some of these other ones, I would say all of these are good recommendations, except for Brave, because I never trusted Brave. I never trusted Brave because of their love of crypto, and obviously I know that Firefox is pushing Gen AI shit into that, so I would take Firefox off that list. But otherwise, I would say that's a pretty good list, although I would add Vivaldi, which is a fork of Opera that is good and is also well supported on Mac and iPhone as well. So you got a Mac or an iPhone, Vivaldi is a good choice. LibreWolf is also a good choice on Mac. If I was on iPhone, iPhone, I would look into, they don't have the standard Tor browser for iPhone. They have something else called Onion browser.
Yes, they have Onion and Phantom.
Oh, you've used that one?
No, I haven't used it. I've seen it. I haven't downloaded. I haven't gotten into it yet because you have to get a subscription. because it's a VPN browser.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
you have to
and
pay for it, or at least from what the little playing around with it I saw. Because after we talked about this the last time, I went and looked up Tor browsers for my iPhone, and they had Phantom and Onion. And I downloaded the Phantom, and the Phantom was, because it said it was also a VPN, and I've been needing a VPN for various reasons. And so the idea of, but then it turns out I have to pay for it, so I got to try to weigh those options. It's like $11, so we'll see.
So it would be easier on iPhone just to say which browsers I would recommend avoiding. So that would be Firefox, Opera, Safari, Microsoft Edge. I know supports Apple devices, so that no Edge on your iPhone. But any web browser that isn't corporate, if it's not Brave, I don't really trust Brave very much, go for it.
Sure.
One big concern that people have about switching to Linux on their PC, aside from it's going to be so hard and they'll have to be a computer nerd to understand this, when there are very easy to use operating systems that are based on Linux.
Right.
Another concern people have is gaming. And the gaming thing was a concern to me for a long time. It kept me using Windows 11 for a long time because I was raised in a world where you needed Windows for high-end PC gaming.
Right.
But eventually I realized that you can run the vast majority of Windows PC games, even AAAs, in Linux, no problem. So yeah, I should probably put up, I'm going to Proton compatibility. So in the Steam retail store, even if a game doesn't say that it's Linux compatible, if it says there's like a Windows version, a Mac version, you can still probably run it in Linux. This is a good resource for checking to see if a Windows game will run in Linux. It's mainly based on the idea that you would be running it on a Steam Deck.
Okay.
That's one of the reasons why Windows PC support for Linux is so good now, is because Steam pushed their own Steam Deck hardware, which is very popular. And this is the Steam Deck is based on Linux. So it kind of created a market where there is considerable interest now on making Windows games work in Linux.
Okay.
But you don't need to have a Steam Deck. You can because this same data applies to a Linux PC as well.
Gotcha.
So you can go here and you can look up your favorite Windows games and see if they're supported. So let's think of something really big in AAA and recent and whatnot. I really hate to do. Yeah, let me think here. It was a big flop. The latest Call of Duty game was a big flop relative to Call of Duty because of all the Gen AI crap in it. But you can see that most Call of Duty games run very well in Linux.
Okay.
But you'll see the vast majority of games. Let's see here.
And I would hope that people's thirst for war has, dimmed quite a bit, and with all of the genocide that we've seen recently. But, that's a whole different thing.
Well, yeah, I'm just thinking about the games that are most popular with, gamer dude bros.
Right.
Oh, here's an example. But I mean, I don't have to pick and choose games that run well on Linux. But I'm just here's an example. This was like a AAA big. You'll find actually the majority of them run great on Linux, but you can double check in ProtonDB. The games that tend to not run well in Linux are certain very popular MOBAs. I don't know why Fortnite doesn't come up here. But generally, I would find with Windows games, even if it doesn't say that Linux supports it, 99% of the time you can get it to run. But not if they use certain anti-cheat software.
Gotcha.
So if there's a anti-cheat for multiplayer that the game developer forces into the game, then it probably won't run because they only develop that for Windows, but the majority will. So if you feel apprehensive about Linux because of gaming, I recommend going to ProtonDB and searching for your favorite games and seeing how well Proton supports it. Because if Proton supports it, that's what makes it run in Linux. Okay. But also, is it worth it to stick with certain games because what Microsoft is doing is they're using Copilot and Recall to spy on you directly to American law enforcement and military intelligence.
Yes.
So even though they might not be watching you at all times, if they want to watch you, they can now go into your computer and, oh, we can see constant screenshots of what they're doing and which applications they're using and who they're emailing and all that.
Right.
And if you realize how hostile the American law enforcement and military intelligence are, you would not want them to have that kind of access to your computer.
Well, I don't think we really want anybody having access to our computer like that. Like, I don't think, most people that are engaged in whatever they're doing in their computer don't probably want that to be, photographed or videoed or whatever, right? And we have all kinds of examples of like Black Mirror episodes where they give you examples of how this exact kind of software could go very sideways for somebody,
If your love of a few MOBAs is what's keeping you from leaving Windows, I would start to question you, right?
Sure. Well, and I think the point that you're making is that there is enough of a trove of games that you should be able to be satiated.
So this is a list of some of the most popular AAA Windows PC games and the ones that are very well supported in Linux. And you're not a gamer, Ryan, but if you
but I saw my kids' game on there.
But if you are a gamer, this looks impressive to you. This, oh wow.
Yeah.
All the big ones.
Coming up, Undertale.
All the big ones that everyone loves are running Linux just fine.
Yeah, the kid was one of the Undertale characters 2 years ago for Halloween. So
there you go. Yes, You're not a gamer, but your son definitely is.
Correct. Yes.
So there you go. So you don't have to. So I would strongly recommend Linux for Windows PC gaming.
Yeah. Okay.
I would also strongly recommend Linux for doing Adobe creative work.
Okay.
Because that's one reason why. Well, I know that a big part of the Mac market are professional creatives creating video and audio and that sort of stuff, right? If you have to stick with Mac for a while, you still want to get rid of Adobe because, not only is Adobe charging over $1,000 probably per year for a simple Creative Cloud license.
Yes.
Right, it's super expensive, but also, and they make it very difficult to cancel, apparently. But another problem is Adobe is all into Gen AI. Like they are pushing it like crazy.
Yes, that I did know because I was doing Photoshop, and the amount of AI that they were pushing every time you went on there just to add a couple things to a photo, got to the point where like I was just like, I can't do this anymore. What are you guys doing? You guys need to. It's just all over the place. So
Yeah. So there's no reason to use any Adobe software, no matter how industry professional you are.
Right.
GIMP is very popular for replacing Photoshop. And then Ibis Paint is another good Photoshop replacement. What Ibis Paint has that GIMP doesn't is when you save an image in Ibis Paint, they now give you the option to process it through what's this called again? Nightshade.
That's
They
right.
give you the option to process your images through Nightshade when you save it. So they put something into your image that makes it a lot more difficult for Gen AI to scan it and use it when it's crawling the internet.
Sure.
So these images just look like good normal art to us, to our human eyes.
Right.
But to the computer scanning it, it doesn't look like anything.
They rewrite the code, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
In that way you're trying. Yeah.
So they process it through something that makes it look the same to the human eye, but makes it unscannable to the Gen AI bot eye.
Yeah.
So GIMP is a good choice, but if you're like, I want built-in Nightshade, then Ibis Paint is an even better choice. Ibis Paint tends to have also some more things built into it for Weebos, because I think they're a Japanese developer.
Okay.
And the Weeb audience is really into stuff like making manga, for instance. They have a bunch of templates that you can put into your art to aid with manga making. But Ibis Paint has been taking a very strong anti-AI stance. So there's that to consider. And one thing I like about Ibis Paint over GIMP is they have mobile versions of Ibis Paint, so both iPhone and Android. I have it on my Graphene OS phone.
Right.
There isn't really mobile phone versions of GIMP.
The boy uses Ibis Paint.
He uses the desktop Mac version, right?
No, he uses the iPad
Okay.
version. Yeah. No, he was recommended it by he does an art thing on the weekends and like an art camp that he goes to on Saturdays, and one of the camp counselors recommended it to him.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Well, it's great that, and I find that Ibis Paint is really designed with artists in mind.
Yeah.
They can make like custom brushes, and they've got all kinds of.
That was her point. She was like, I've never used one that's better for all the kind of stuff that I want to do, all the experimenting that I want to do. And so he was really excited about it. And if you know the kid, he doesn't get excited about much. So when he comes home juiced about something, we tend to look into it pretty hard.
So their strong anti-Gen AI stance is very good, because putting Nightshade into Ibis Paint, it shows that they're making Ibis Paint for artists and not for corporate agendas.
Right.
Basically. Because that's the thing too, is now most of the general public hates Gen AI. And the only reason why corporations make a big deal about Gen AI being in their products and services is for shareholders.
Yes.
So it's an example now of how the customer doesn't matter anymore. The only entity that matters is the shareholder.
That's right.
So that, the libertarians and other capitalists used to make a big thing about how capitalism, you end up with the best goods and services, because obviously customers would choose the best products and not the bad products. And if a company did something bad with their product, customers would stop paying for it. But,
right. Even though we have literal centuries of proof against that. Right.
Yeah.
Because in the entirety of capitalism, it has been proven that the best product does not always end as the victor. Go from Tesla and Edison, on, with instances of or even the Linux and Windows, right? Because there was a lot of people at the beginning who thought that Linux was a better operating system, right?
Yeah.
And that if the market was a fair one, that they should have won out in the marketplace of ideas. But that Microsoft got the heads up for monetary reasons.
Yeah, it totally overlooks the power balance that capitalism creates with concentrating all that wealth at the top. So now we're getting it more obvious that we're having, like, customers do not want Gen AI shoved in their face, but that's what every corporation is doing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a perfect example of how, the customer is not king.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. And in fact, they're counting on, most of these corporations are counting on our inability to change, our desire not to change, our the flock, so to speak, desire to want to go with the flow, right? And so that's the thing that we really have to work towards, because that's what the Gen AI is trying to do, right? Is help perpetuate this general malaise that exists within the greater culture.
So do you have any questions for me, like technical questions, to wrap this up? Because you are in the role of the less computer geeky person.
Yeah, no. So as far as I can see, no, like, I think you did a really great job of explaining everything. And I think that, if you guys have further questions, that's what our website's for. Like, we'll put links to, all of this stuff, underneath here. But yeah, no, I think you did a great job. I think, I can't think any questions. So
thank you. Yeah. So that's probably the approach that you're going to have to take for the time being, is keeping Mac, because I know that you are an Apple user at home. So keeping Mac, but being vigilant every time there's an update to disable Apple Intelligence, and to use as much non-corporate software within your Mac as possible.
Well, and I think, that's the thing that I've learned today, right? Is that there are, even within the Mac structure, there are alternatives, right? Because the tech world is a much bigger place than Google and Apple.
Oh, wait. I forgot to mention LibreOffice, which...
Oh, my goodness.
Because that's another big problem, is that Gen AI is being shoved into office productivity software. So Microsoft 365, Microsoft Office 365, whatever the hell they're calling it now.
Right.
And that software that's not just for Windows, but also for Mac. Don't use it. Don't use Microsoft 365. They are pushing Copilot into that really hard. And don't use Google Docs, because same thing, even though Google Docs isn't usually something that you install onto your computer.
Right.
They are forcing it into the application that you're running in your web browser. So
Gotcha.
So there is no reason to use any of that, because LibreOffice exists. LibreOffice is free. LibreOffice is available for every operating system. Every operating system, mainly every desktop operating system. So every version of Windows, Mac, and Windows, there's LibreOffice.
So you would use this for, like, just for what exactly? I mean,
good question, because not everyone uses Office software. So it's got LibreOffice Writer, which is the So LibreOffice Writer is the Microsoft Word replacement that uses doc files.
Okay.
Calc is the Excel replacement that works with the same XLSX file format as Excel.
Okay.
All the Office file formats are supported in all these applications. So Impress is the PowerPoint substitute. I've never used this sort of database software, but this would be their replacement for, I believe, what is it called in Office? I've never used it, but
I also have never used it.
all the components that are traditionally in the Microsoft Office suite
Gotcha.
have an equivalent in LibreOffice, but probably the most commonly used ones are Writer and Calc and Impress for spreadsheets.
Okay.
Sorry, Impress for PowerPoint presentations. So there is no, and then people say, okay, that's great, but I need to collaborate with my team when we're creating something.
Right.
The documentation that you can save and configure the documents in such a way that multiple people can make edits and you can know who makes what edits. So you can do that and just share it around your group who's working on something as an email. So I don't see the point in, oh, but we have to use Google Docs. We have to use Office 365 because we need to collaborate on a document.
Right. There are other ways to collaborate on documents that, don't send us towards species death quite as fast.
Exactly. And then you can share the, as I said, this all the Microsoft Office file formats. So you can save your documents and the people on the other end can open it in Office 365 or whatever.
So I think if I understand what you're saying, right, is that these mimic all of the functions that, that the Google and the Microsoft do for people that, exist in the corporate world.
Yeah.
And that, if everybody just takes an extra 5 minutes to download this software together, then you guys have a place to exist outside of the corporate, like the corporate tech structure.
Or even if the other people are using Office 365, the same file formats are all compatible. But I would definitely want to convince other people on your team to switch to LibreOffice.
Yeah. And that's what we're pushing for, right? Like,
so basically, like there was a time when Word didn't have all this evil crap in it, before like 2007, for instance. Right? So using LibreOffice is basically like using Office 2007, and using these, using like Linux Mint is like using Windows XP, but without any bad Microsoft stuff in it.
Right.
Yeah. So basically, a lot of these free non-corporate alternatives to corporate software that's spying on you and pushing Gen AI in your face are just like the older versions of applications before corporate greed ruined them.
Gotcha. Yeah, and the greater point is that these options are available to all of us, and that we, aren't stuck with Gen AI. You do not have to accept Gen AI into your life. You 100% can fight back. You 100% can navigate around all of it at this point. And enough of us have, and if we continue on this path, we have a real chance at, keeping this software away from us while it's in the hands of these absolute monsters. Exactly.
All right. That was great. Thank you very much, Ryan.
Oh, anytime. I loved it. That was so fun. So we are going to end right here. This has been great. If you have any questions or you want to come be a part of what we do, we are both members of stopgenai.com. And our whole modus operandi is to get around all this and to avoid all this and to help others do the same. And also, we are a mutual aid collective. And so if you are fortunate enough to be in a financial situation where you are able and you would like to help financially support our efforts, go to stopgenai.com. But also, if you would like to join up, if you think that you have skills that could help us do this, that, exist beyond just like opening your wallet, then we're game for that too. Like we, as long as you are an anti-capitalist, we accept you.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to hand it over to Kim, and then we're going to get out of here.
I got nothing more to say. Thank you very much, everyone.
Mask up, fam.
Yes.